Hi, please excuse my very messy bench. Just getting the camera set up here. Okay, I want to make a quick video on one of my favorite ways to repair scales that have been broken at the either end, and that's to make a brass cap. So I've already got one roughed out. The idea is you glue it back together and you hide your repair by making a brass cap for it. This one ended up filling a bunch of the missing horn with JB weld, and it was pretty atrocious actually, the break. So this is one of my first ones, not one of my better jobs. Hopefully this one will go a little bit better for you. So how do we do it? Onto that. First thing you need is some brass. You can use old cartridge brass, any kind of brass. This is some sheet brass. It's a little bit thick, so I had to hammer it out, get it a little thinner. Once you get it the thickness you want, hopefully you can buy it the right thickness, but I can never buy it in the town I live in. You take your scale that you've repaired. This one is ivory. I've glued it. I don't know if I can get the repair into focus, but you can still see the crack. It's quite visible. I'm not happy with it. I glued the leather the leather shim to the back for a little added strength, and I'm going to put the brass on the outside to hide it, also added strength. So what you want to do is, you want to get brass on either side of it, of the hole. You want to trace the shape you want. Then you want to cut it out. Whatever you have for cutters, even pair of scissors will work. If they're a half decent pair of scissors, will generally work. If it's thin brass, these are just cheap cutters. Screw likes to work loose on them, and do that. If you want to leave a little bit of material to hang on to, that's okay. And I cut it off. I was going to say, if you want to leave a little bit to hold on to, that's okay. You just got to have it cut about 99% of the way. Otherwise it'll crack and won't expand properly. And what you want to do to get it to form properly is you're going to need a ball peen hammer. 2 ball peen hammers is better. If you'll notice, this one is rounded. Let's see if we can pick that up in the camera. It's rounded to the form of the scale. To do that, you use a ball peen hammer. You'll notice when you set it on, it's probably going to be a little bit too small because, it has to be bigger for the rounding. The arc takes a little bit more room. So what you need to do is you want to focus on hammering right just inside the line. So I'm going to hold it with a pair of needle nose pliers. And I'm going to tap all the way around it, the perimeter. One little note about when you're trying to expand brass, like that sheet, I did flatten and thin this out quite a bit. Don't try to start at one side, thin it as thin as you want, and work your way to the other. You've got to do it, stretch it a little bit all the way across and work your way back and forth. Otherwise, you'll just end up cracking it. If you know what I mean, you can't, have it 1/4 inch wide in one spot and then right next to it 1 inch wide. It's just too much expansion all at once. It's got to be gradual. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but it's starting to take some shape. Starting to get a little bit of a curve to it. So you want to keep often checking your curve. See how it's going to sit on your, getting close. You want to keep checking it often to see how it's going to sit on your scale. You don't want to over curve it, but you don't want to under curve it. And you can't force it. You can't put it on here and bend it around it, or it's ivory, it's going to crack, right? And the nice thing about brass is if you cut a little bit too much off, brass stretches. So I don't know if you can see that. You can see it's already taking a form. It's like a thumbnail, really. If your aim is bad with a hammer, which you can do, you set one ball peen down, tap it with any kind of hammer, really. Starting to come along, so I just need to work a little bit more around these edges and just get it to form around the edges, just a smidgen more. So I'm just going to do it this way. Test it. Okay. It's pretty good, except what's happening is it's like a perfect arc. It's arcing in the middle where it's flat. So all you need to do to combat that is you want, it's not the end of the world if you don't have them, but it's better if you have a pair of pliers that don't have any grips on them. Those ones are a little bit wide. Just gonna hurt small. So all you need to do is put your pliers just before the tip. You don't want to undo all of the rounding you did, and then just, that's my big hammer, I don't need that one. Don't need my gasket hammer out there. Okay. There, and then that just flattened it out just in the center portion where it's got to be flat. There. That's good. So now when I peen this, it's going to sit flat on the scale. There's not going to be any movement in there. It's not going to want to crack the ivory. It's going to be a nice tight fit. So what I'll do, when it's time to put this together, I will most likely put a little bit of polyurethane glue, Gorilla Glue, even Liquid Nails is polyurethane glue, construction glue, PL400. Anyway, some sort of glue in there. Let it get just a little bit tacky. Need to drill my hole in there. Put that on, and then peen it up, and it'll be nice and strong. It'll make that joint, so that ivory will never crack. Okay, Now, time to drill. The way I like to drill this is, obviously we need to mark it. So I need to check this just how it sits best, because of the way the arc is. Obviously my line's not straight, perfectly straight across. That's something I'm going to need to clean up, but so that's how I want it setting. Okay. There. It's one of those days I need a third hand. I lost a leg, why can't I gain a hand? It's only fair. Why can't I? Okay, so when I drill, I'm just going to I'm not trying to drill through it. I just wanted to make a mark. Just make a mark. And I did. Now I'm going to put a piece of wood through it and drill through it. Last thing you need is to have that sucker spin and at best scratch up your ivory, at worst break your ivory. Okay, that's a good way to cut myself. Okay, let's hold you. Didn't have my chuck tight enough. my bit went into hibernation. I always like to, these little 3/16, I always like to have them fairly as far into the chuck as I can because I break so many of them. I buy cobalt ones, but I'm always drilling steel and stuff, and anyway, there we go. So now we're gonna put this on the scale that it goes on to, put a pin through it, make sure everything fits properly, and then trim off the excess. There's some pin stock. A little bit of silver pin stock, why not? It's just to hold it. Okay, now that's on, put it in place. All I'm going to do is lightly trim off the excess. I know you can't see me doing this, but there. So I don't get it 100% perfect at this point. I just make sure there is none overhanging that's going to get in the way when I put it together. I generally I do my last trim, my final trim, once it's all together. And then it, I find I get a much better fit if I do it once it's all together. So yeah, I'm going to put you on pause for now, and I will carry on with the cleanup. I don't think you need to watch me trim the edges. I think you get the gist, and we'll come back when we're a little further along. Okay, I'm just getting ready to peen this together. Got a little bit of glue on there. Already got my pin through and set up. Using good old Gorilla Glue. Not using a washer because these mine are fairly thick. I don't really need a washer, backing washer with these. How I like to peen, hold my hammer so it's balanced. It's just touching my wrist, and I'm more or less just dropping it. Let the weight of the hammer do the work. If you listen real close, you'll hear it bounce. Make sure I got everything together tight. That almost like a drum roll effect is what you want. As soon as it'll mushroom out enough where I can't pull that off, lift it up and pull it. Also, I drill a little hole in my anvil here that I can put the pin in. Helps to stabilize it. You can do the same effect if you drill a little hole in a piece of wood, set the wood on your anvil. It doesn't have to be an anvil, any hard flat piece of metal will work. Those are not my good cutters. That is way too much. Oh, there it is. Right in front of me. The flatter you get it filing, the better the peen you're going to get. You want your pin straight up and down, 90 degrees to your hammering surface. Everything tight. You'll know by the sound it makes as soon as you hit it. If it doesn't sound right, something's off. There you go. There's the bounce. When you pick it up and drop it like this, that means you're dropping it straight down, so it's hitting it perfectly. When you swing it, there's a chance it's going to hit on the side, it's going to miss it, but by dropping it, it's hitting right on the point where it's meant to be. And when it bounces, you're getting 3 hits for the price of 1, or however many bounces you get. So you're tripling your force. And you're also a lot less likely to do any damage. Slightly slower, but it's ivory, so it's also probably 130-year-old ivory, which I also rubbed with some ink oil, put a little bit of lubrication back in it. Hopefully it'll be less apt to split. Yeah, I'm only lifting this maybe an inch and drop, inch, up, drop. So it's not as tight as it should be. Now at this point, this is about where I like to stop. Then I'll put the blade in, and I like to leave everything just a little bit loose. Sometimes the blade won't quite sit right, and you'll just need to make a little bit of a push here, front to back. Sometimes it's not a bent pin, sometimes it's just a slight little push this way or this way, especially if you're working with like a Sheffield blade, because the pins aren't they're not 9/16 or sorry 1/16, like you know, like a lot of them, they got that big hole that looks like it was blasted through with a piece of square rod almost. So yeah, so this, I'm going to grab my my washer. Now I tried to stack up some washers and see if I can make a poor man's beehive here. Okay, I just thought I'd do a quick video and show you what I mean by the way I grind. Again, I keep the wheel in line with the razor. Be careful not to bite into the ivory. I'm not using too high of an RPM. I'm right in the medium range. Looks a little odd right now. We're getting there. Other important thing is have some water handy. I've got some down here. It gets hot, so just keep cooling it. That's why you don't want incredibly high heat temperature. Let's try it again. Speed. If you try it on too high a speed, you're gonna get a lot of heat, and you could discolor your ivory. So medium-low speed's good. Okay, so I'm going to continue with my shaping and carry on. Okay, to try to cut down on this, I went ahead and cleaned this up. I just used some good old toothpaste. Just don't use the whitening kind. Any regular toothpaste will work. Not sure if fluoride toothpaste will recalcify dead bone the way it does human bone, but maybe. Anyway, it works well on ivory or bone scales. Cleans it right up. These at one point were quite rusty. Also, I always get a lot of polish on them. I try to tape them up, whatever, but you still end up with polish on them. There's my attempt at a beehive. I just stacked 4 different sized washers that I made. I didn't quite spin them long enough to get them round, unfortunately. I rushed it a bit and paid the price there. My bench is a disaster. I was moving it today, so anyway, the main point of this video was to make these tips. There you have it. I still have a piece of the tip. Sorry, I have a problem with my jaw. It's affecting my speech. Today I have a little broken bone in it. It's healing anyway. Yeah, so you can still see a little crack. I didn't want to go all the way up simply because I thought it looked stupid having that brass too high, but still shows a little tiny piece of the crack, but it's going to be plenty strong the way it is. The other side matches. The brass is polished. Could use a little bit more polish. A lot of times, especially when you hammer it, you've got to sand the brass a little bit. You can, when you use a ball peen, you can cup it right around. I don't like to. I like to just have it cupped around the, you know, just around the scale. I don't like it to have it cupped any more than that. I think that otherwise it interferes with when you put it together, even though I do have the shim glued to the scale for extra strength. Anyway, that's how I make it. I also do a similar thing to this where I will make an end piece like this. Give me half. Okay, so this was my great-grandfather's Thomas Turner cutler to His Majesty, so it's 1820 to 1837. So I added this B to the bottom. So basically same process. Made the shape, and then I used a ball peen to tap around the inside edges to get the curve to match, and then peened it on. Didn't want to change too much, being a, you know, very old razor. Almost 200 years old, 190. Well, 200 if it's 1820. Anyway, yeah. So, you know, you can get creative. You can add your own initials. It doesn't have to be a B. This wasn't cracked. I just did it because I wanted it to have something signifying it was a family heirloom. It can be this to hide a crack. You know. Can be this instead of a washer. It's not really all that hard to do. I think it kind of adds a bit of class. Why not? Shiny. I'm a sucker for shiny. I'm also lazy about cleaning my bench. God, that's a disgusting mess. I went moving my bench from one side of the room to the other, so I I had to stop working to play for a little bit. And this was the process. So you got a little bonus video about my experimental stacking beehive washers. I'll put a link in, or I'll put a little guide to how I made the jig for making these in there. It's fairly simple. I think there's some potential for this. Maybe if I polish it a little bit more, they would look a little bit more like the factory ones. And they want almost $1 a piece for these when you buy them. I mean, it's okay if you're only doing one razor, but I've bought 80 razors this year, so it gets expensive, especially when you wreck a few. Okay. I really do hope I help somebody. Thanks.